Finally, we are starting to really understand how Gravy Bones plans to use his allies, and it may end up making him one of the most complex and challenging heroes to play in Flesh and Blood. So, with these new spoilers, let's go ahead and break down how these allies are going to play with Mr. Gravy Bones himself. I have all of the pretty cards up, like the best of the arts, and that may make it a little bit difficult to show off Gravy Bones himself, but just as a reminder of how he functions, here is his card text. If I can't click this, unfortunately, and I can't zoom in, but either way, he has the card text that says instant, tap him, destroy a gold you control, draw a card, then discard a card. It says if a blue card has been put into your graveyard this turn, you may play cards with Watery Grave from your graveyard. Now, we already knew this. We already saw Chum and how it kind of functions in that space of being able to pull this out of the graveyard and play it down in that way. One of the big key question marks was whether or not we had an easy way of giving Go Again. So far, that's not really answered as of yet. We do have other things we can do in the form of attacks, of course, that we can be playing out. But as far as these allies are concerned, the only real comfortable, maybe consistent way of giving Go Again that we have to the attack is, of course, Gold Kiss Rum. So some of these are not going to have natural Go Again. Some of these allies are going to have natural Go Again, and that is a key point to it. But Go Again on these allies is not as readily available as it is in Illusionist, and that's a key difference to how he functions. Now, playing them, you can actually get Go Again on that, thanks to the compass that we saw spoiled very early on when the set was basically announced. Because instant, you can tap it, look at the top card of your deck, but that's not the most important part. The first card with Watery Grave you play from your graveyard each turn gets Go Again. So if you're playing these cards from your graveyard, then you do have the ability to give them Go Again. And putting them into the graveyard is one of the key pieces here. So of course, using his effect to discard a card, and then using other card effects to do so as well is a huge benefit. But the interesting thing about these allies is that the fact that they're not blocking cards. These are non-block cards, and how many of them you include in your deck is going to be a key deck building decision, because the challenge is going to be surviving and thriving off of your board, forcing your opponent to deal with something that they can't deal with, and an easy mean of blocking with like Phantasm and popping. You can't do that. So building a board of 1 or 2 of these threatening allies is going to be very important, right? And then leveraging them and forcing your opponent to deal with them is step 2. But there's this old saying, it was popularized by a very popular content creator and commentator in the StarCraft space, Day9. And he said, very wisely, he said, if your opponent is doing something weird, just go f***ing kill them. And that's the problem with these allies, is that your opponent's going to see that you're doing something very powerful, perhaps, or very weird, and they might just go f***ing kill you. There is a key point. So in that headspace, you need to understand that these are non-blocking cards, and if you include like 25 of them in your deck, then you're in for a bad time. So the question is, how many of these will be like mainstays? How many of these will be, like windmill slams? And how many of these will live in the sideboard? That's a really interesting and challenging part of the deck building. And then, of course, playing them out, not having natural Go Again on their attacks, not having natural Go Again unless you played them from the Watery Depths graveyard, because you can just cast them from your hand, of course. Doing it the other way around means that you have to wrestle with the value proposition that you're giving your opponent and the lack of, effect that they might come in with. Those are all things that you have to think about. I think Necromancer at this point is looking to be perhaps the most complicated class, or most challenging perhaps class in the game. So let's go ahead, without further ado, let's talk about all of the allies thus far. Chum, Friendly First Mate, is the first ally that we saw alongside of Rigor Mortis. Cost 4, attacks for 4, has 6 health, says action tap to attack, and then it says instant tap, discard a card with Watery Grave until the end of the turn. opponents must choose this as the target. So it essentially pulls your opponent into attacking this. This will be a Windmill Slam in the deck. I think you definitely run as many copies of this card as you can, because Arclight Sentinel is a good effect, and the fact that this is a free attack once it's on the board means that your opponent, even if you don't use the effect, is incentivized to kill this. But again, and this is why I'm allured by this class, and specifically with Gravy Bones, but I'm also incredibly reticent to fully commit, because this is a very hard card and overall class right now to evaluate, the Necromancer class. From a timing in the game standpoint, this card could be really unimpactful. You play this on turn 0, your opponent's like, cool, I don't care, I will kill it, and that doesn't do much for my game plan. But you play this at the end of the game. And in fact, I think by and large, many of these characters that can come down, these allies, if they're played at the end of the game, pose significantly more a threat than they do when played at the beginning of the game. This is one of those examples, and probably all of them to some degree are as well, because at the end of the game, your opponent is at a low life total. They definitely need to clear your board, but they also might be in that position that they were in to Dromai, where it's like, at this point, I need to just kill you. And then you say, no, I can't do that. So all this to say, this is a Windmill Slam Dunk. Now, can we say the same thing about Moray Le Fay? Yes, Morgan Le Fay, Moray Le Fay. You love to see it. All of these, by the way, are so Scuba, come on. The names. The amount of on the nose, it's so on the nose, it might as well be attached at this point. All right, Moray Le Fay is a 0 cost, 0 attack, 3 health ally that says action, tap to attack, instant pay 1, tap it, put a +1 counter on target ally. Because the counter does not say that it goes away, we can assume this counter sticks around. This is your Spectral Shield-like buffing effect that we've seen in the past, but you have to pay for it now. So this is what I like that they're doing. They're referencing old effects that they have already in the game, and they're making them a little bit more balanced, which bodes poorly if this class needs to be or wants to be the best in the game. But I think it's great for a balance perspective, because we don't need another illusionist that just puts free counters on spectral shields for no purpose, right? So you're paying to do this, you're paying to tap, and your opponent has to choose, do I clear Moray Le Fay with a 3 power attack? And into certain matchups, this is actually insane, right? I mean, look at Illusionist versus Guardian, and when they establish the aura that gives a +1 on to your aura when it attacks, the name eludes me. You can leave a comment down below to help me out. But when they establish that, you're like, well, that sucks. I need to kill that right now. But then you're also posed with all of these other issues that you should probably kill these other things. This is that. This is exactly that. So I personally think that in most matchups, you're probably looking at this being just straight up in the deck. But in very heavy race scenarios and aggro matchups, you probably just don't have the space to get value out of this in the long term, which is pretty interesting. Wher Humperdink, hey, you know what? For this one, we should get a little bit more special. Hold, please. Hold. We need to do this in a different way. As I was saying, Wher Humperdink here is a 6 cost, 11 power, 7 health ally that says action, pay 6 to attack. Also tap, of course. These all, by the way, have Watery Grave, which we can, kind of factor into our evaluation of these cards. This thing attacks for 11. This thing has 7 health. Now, here's the crazy part about this. If you were to evaluate this at the beginning of the game, I think you would look at this and go, this is just probably not worth it in a lot of cases, right? It kind of just time locks your opponent from, playing one singular turn. And if you spent 12 resources playing this from the graveyard towards the beginning of the game, it doesn't feel very good. But this probably wins just about every game in the late game, regardless of the matchup, even into Guardian. I was looking at this into Guardian and I was thinking to myself, okay, they probably don't care that much that they can just throw one attack and remove this from the game. But if they do that and spend basically their entire turn just throwing 1 attack for 7 or more, clearing this, they would likely have to block, with 2 cards, blocking 6, maybe with some equipment as well, but let's just factor in they block 2 cards and they somehow like pitch 3, do a 3 for 7, right? In doing so, you spent your entire turn playing Wher Humperdink here, attacking for 11, maybe pushing some damage out there, and then absorbing a 7 power attack and then not taking any damage yourself. You basically just swung the tempo completely in your favor. And that's not to even count whether or not you had other pieces on the board that now you can possibly take advantage of. So this is a full-on tempo swing into that matchup. But into just about every other matchup, it just wins. Like, this is just a winning card. But I don't know if I would run 3 of these. In fact, I probably do know that I would not run 3 of these. This feels like I would include 1 in just about every matchup, except for maybe the hyper aggro decks that are going to be over in like a handful of turns. But I don't know, because it really kind of depends on what other shells we can build with the non-ally cards that we're given. If there are other cards besides Chart the High Seas that you could actually like build around this type of card, maybe you can include more. By the way, my original spoiler was not going to be analog horror. It was literally going to be a skit of me acting against myself and posing the turn 1 line of 3 blues and Chart the High Seas, finding this and a blue off the top, and then playing this from the graveyard off of Watery Grave, and then attacking with it with the other 2 blues. Thanks to the Chart the High Seas. Yeah, that is a pretty sick line that you can do off of literally 3 blues and Chart the High Seas. So yeah, this card can high roll, and it feels like Cosmic Awakening or Manifestations of Mirakai, but perhaps more balanced and at the right time. Because again, this class is all about value propositions and timing. Will you get it in time? Will you get what you want on time? And we're back to this screen. Okay, continuing on, we'll move a little faster now. Kelpy Tangled Mess is a 0 cost, 1 power, 3 health ally that says action tap to attack, action pay 1, tap target hero or ally, go again. This to me is just like the mirror breaker. It feels like you could run this out there and like tap a hero into the mirror or tap an ally into the mirror, or if you're playing in this set specifically, you can tap the other heroes as well and just feel kind of comfortable doing that. Right now, it doesn't do enough to really justify anything unless you very much expect these heroes to be like at the top and heavily played in your local meta. It doesn't make sense to run this as an overall card. It's gonna be very good in limited though. Like, this to me feels like a great limited card. Also, it's beautiful. That is an incredible looking card, but I don't think this is going to make the cut unless you're playing it in the sideboard slot for the mirror or for any tapping hero. Limpit. So God. Limpit Hopalong is a 0 cost, 2 power, 1 health ally that says action pay 1, tap to attack. Now keep in mind, some of these are literally you have to pay to attack. Some of them are just don't even pay. Literally they're free, you just have to tap to attack. This one is key in that it has go again attached to it. Now this is a fantastic card into almost everything except like ninjas. Anything that deals like 1 point of directed damage, by that I mean you could direct arcane damage to this conceivably in some way, shape, or form. So like a rune blade that can target with arcane damage, or a wizard that can target with arcane damage. This perhaps doesn't feel as good, but specifically for wizard, I don't think you're ever worrying about that, because wizards, the way that they're currently built, you are literally sending your entire attack at them, or your entire chunk of arcane damage at an ally. So for really specifically like ninjas or perhaps a rune blade, this doesn't feel like it would be as good. But even without all of that, I think this is just going to be one of those windmill slam type cards. Yes, it only does 2 damage, but you get this on the board and no one wants to spend time clearing it unless they're a ninja and can do so easily. Like even an assassin right now can pitch 2 resources to kill this with a dagger. And maybe that's okay, but at the same time, like they would much rather have the synergy that they have hitting you with the dagger than they would this. So it's more than likely that they're going to build their turn around not killing this than they are just killing it, unless they respect to go again. And that's the value proposition game. Like, this card costs you a card. It costs you nothing else except a card to play. And so if it doesn't attack on the first turn, your opponent might be like, cool, I'm going to leave it. Then it's going to cost you 1 resource. So a card plus a resource to get 2 value out of, to attack. That's not very good. But how many turns in that matchup is it going to take for this to go above rate? Not too terribly many. It's really up to the matchup. But that being said, I feel like this is going to be a very played card because it has go again attached to it, and that is rare. That is going to get played because everyone wants to play the dog. Like, you remember how hyped people were for Polycranka? This might be that same type of deal, but it's an undead dog. I don't know, and it's called Scuba. Scuba Dooba Doo. Yep, they went there. Salty Sea Dog. God, it's so good and yet bad. It is a, oh my god, it's a 0-cost 4/4, but you got to pay 3 to attack with it, and you have to tap, of course. When this attacks, you can put a yellow card from your graveyard on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you do create a gold token, it fetches. It says fetch. Go get it. Go fetch. The dog fetches for you. Are you understanding the connection with the art and the character and the effect? It costs you 3 resources, but it gets you a yellow and it gets you a gold token. This card's insane. This is like the Kyloria, but in a way better, kind of better for the hero almost. Like, this card's insane. This card's really good. Tell me I'm wrong. I mean, if I miss something, it doesn't have go again, of course, but like, you gotta pay 3 and you gotta play the card. But if this ever gets the effect, what are you doing? You're paying a card and pitching a card to attack for 4 and to recur a yellow card and create a gold token. Now, recurring the yellow card might be good, might not be good, but gaining a gold token is always a good thing. Except for maybe if your opponent's trying to steal it from you. But either way, the dog goes and fetches for you, does 4 damage. Card's good. Barnacle costs 2, attacks for 4, not nearly as good as Scuba. I mean, am I right? We're Scuba Gang here. Scuba Gang down in comments below. We've become Scuba Gang. Infinite, what am I even saying? I'm just so delirious from the fact that we have a dog now in the game. 2 cost, 4 power, 3 health, Barnacle ally. Action tap to attack. This is literally like the vanilla card. This is like the linchpin card you must put together you must have in the game in order to play limited. Like, this feels like a purely just okay limited card. You could probably see people trying this out. This would be like the perfect card to play in Project Blue. Am I right? Like, this is the Project Blue card. That being said, it doesn't feel like it does enough for us. And if we are worried about our deck space and building a deck that functions and allows us to block and do things like that, this card may not make the cut in actual constructed play. Chowder, Hardy Cook, and the art looks a little strange, like he's covered in soot and things like that, but that, like, based on the way the image looks, like, it almost looks like there's parts missing. So I bet it looks a little bit like poppier in like person in print. Nevertheless, Chowder, Hardy Cook costs 3, attacks for 3, has 3 health, so it's the perfect 3/3/3. It has action, tap to attack, and instant tap to gain 1. I think this one is one of the more interesting ones to think about because it has 2 ways to play it. Like, you can tap, attack, and then remember, tapping untaps at the end of your turn. It's not Magic the Gathering. Tapping does not reset itself at the start of your turn. It does so at the end of your turn, which means that you can play this, attack with it, end your turn, untap, and then instant tap gain 1. So it nets you 4 total value. If your opponent like says, I'm going to declare, I'm going to attack Chowder, tap gain 1, there's my 4 value. That's kind of cool, but it's expensive. It costs 3, and that is very expensive. So the interesting value proposition to me, like, how much do you want to just leave this out on the board and just hope your opponent forgets about it every turn? Or like there's other things to deal with every turn, because eventually you just keep instant tapping this like on your turn or on your opponent's turn, and you gain a life, you gain a life, you gain a life. How many times do you have to gain life for this to get value? Well, it's like 3.5 plus 3. So like you would have to gain like 6 life off of this over like 6 turns. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of iffy, but the moment you attack with it and it deals 3 damage, that goes through the roof. So it's a really interesting card. I like this card a lot. I don't know if it deserves to be in the deck like crazy amounts, because it doesn't do, you know, like massive amount of damage, and it's not like the beefiest thing. It's literally on rate for all attack actions and weapons for the most part. Like it's kind of in that weird liminal zone where you could maybe play this in 3-of and it could just be like super fine, or you could just be like, this is like a 1 or 2-of card and you just leave it out there and tap 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 away. It's probably more that. It's probably more a 1 or 2-of type card when you're building the deck, but it like just gets you incremental value because your opponent has other crap to deal with. I think that's great. I love this freaking card just because of the art, but Cuddy Shark Quick Clip is a hard thing to say, and yet it also costs 1, attacks for 3, has 4 health. It says action, pay 1, tap to attack. So this one you got to pay for. Once per turn action, pay a resource. Your next ally attack this turn gets +1. Go again. So this is not at instant speed. It is an action effect, but you don't have to tap. You use it once, and then this card, you pay a second time, you pay a second resource. This would attack for 4. But you can now apply this buff to any of these other allies, and all of a sudden things get a lot more interesting. Like I look at this card as like a nice little 1 or 2-of. This is such a gadget type heroes deck. Like this is the perfect deck for that person that is just gonna main this hero and go, I want just 1 Cuddy Shark. I want just 1 Chowder Hardy Cook. I want exactly 2 Moray Le Fays. In this matchup, I'm going to play 1 Kelpy, and then I'm going to whisper that I have 2, which would is a little underhanded. But you get the picture, right? Like this to me, Cuddy Shark feels like a fantastic like 2-of. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like a solid card to, you probably play this as 3-of, you know, because like it's a card that asks you to interact with it so that it prevents like the extra benefit, but it's also forcing the person playing it to pay a lot into it, because like you can pitch a blue and do both of these effects and attack for 4. Is that good? It's like this plus a blue, so it's like 2 cards that you're spending to deal 4 damage. If your opponent doesn't remove it with like a breakpoint attack, then now you get to kind of do the same thing all these other heroes do, but this one can apply its buff to other things that might matter as well and might be more awkward, like Rigor Mortis, which costs 1, attacks for 6, and has 1 health. Literally, you pay 1 and you tap it to attack. Pushing this to 7 is just annoying. Now, there's no on-hits attached to all of these. There's literally no on-hits so far that we've seen. So what does any of this damage matter? It doesn't. It's just numbers. And not only is it just numbers, but it's numbers over the long term. And so this card to me is like super powerful. This is like the Vincerakai, right? You look at this and you go, all right, what's the benefit here? Well, it does a lot of freaking damage, but all of my opponents can basically just sneeze on it, except like Guardians. Like everybody can sneeze on this card and it goes away. But you're forcing them to sneeze on the card. Like, you're not playing this into anyone that can deal 1 damage comfortably. You're not playing this into anyone that deals like board damage. You're probably not getting enough value in those scenarios, and you're opening yourself up to like these blowout plays where they're just like, cool, dagger, and then hit you a bunch, and that did nothing for you except maybe dealt 6 damage, and it took all this setup. So to me, this card doesn't strike me as like super great, but I could see it being very good and a super great side in like Guardian or Brute or things that don't have ways of just like weapon damage. Cool, now I'm going to keep going. If you don't have action point generation, this can get a lot of value. But outside of that, I think it's fine in like limited. Like this is going to be a good limited card in some way, shape, or form. And finally, Shelly Hardened Traveler is a 2-cost, 4 power, 5 health ally that says action pay 3, tap to attack. An instant tap. The next attack action card you defend with this turn gets +1 block. I like this card a lot. Oh my god, like this whole scenario just gives me like weird Hearthstone vibes, and I'm like kind of here for it. Like all of these like little gadgety cards gives me some like Hearthstone vibes. I don't know why. There's not really a great correlation between this and Hearthstone, but it gives me the vibes. I think maybe it's the naming conventions with some of the gadgety type effects is giving me that vibe. Either way, this one's really interesting because it asks your opponent to attack it, and then it loses like value in 2 different ways. Because obviously you want to leave this on the board and maybe get more attacks out of it, or leave this on the board and get its effect. In doing so, you're getting value in a variety of different ways, and your opponent just has to remove that value. But it's an awkward number. Not even a breakpoint clears this, so you have to send 2 things into this, or spend your action point basically on all of the heroes and classes that don't have action point generation. You spend your action point to clear this so that your opponent doesn't get defensive value. This, to me, I think this is a linchpin card for a deck that is going to be a little fiddly, for a deck that is going to ask a lot of questions of you from a deck builder perspective and from a play perspective. Is this the time to attack with this hero or this ally? Is this the time to play this ally? Is this the time to send this conventional attack? Should I get value in this way or this way or this way? This is the type of card that this style of play would really hinge on, because now you're using this card to gain incremental value and extend the game. And I think this is a hero that probably wants to extend the game. I don't necessarily know that you're going to play this rush down style of aggressive deck. Maybe you can do that into certain matchups with like some of these, hero or these allies that are asking you to like just push extra damage and say, hey, slow down your game plan and deal with my board. Maybe there is a world, and I kind of hope that there is, because I like that play style. Build a board, say deal with it, and like keep attacking the opponent and make them answer your question. But this card kind of leads us into the ability to play a longer game plan, deal with the board. Otherwise, I'll just outvalue you. And that's where I think this Pirate Necromancer class is really headed. I think that's what to expect with this, based on everything we've seen so far. Am I way off base though? Let me know in a comment below, and of course, make our number go to the other number, because 24,145 is actually my wife's favorite number. Tell her in the comments that it's her favorite number. She knows this, but you could tell her that. You could support her as well. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.